Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric Holloway with the National Weather Service with Alaska Weather. For June 10th, 2020, we do have a couple options for you to help you further refine your weather search. A 1-800 number takes you through a menu system. And there's a web page, weather.gov/Alaska. You can take off Alaska and put in our three offices, Anchorage, Fairbanks, or Juneau. And then lastly, if you have any questions about the program or anything we do here at the Weather Service, please contact us using that email listed at the bottom of the page. For the hazards map, there are no hazards out currently over the land areas, but we do have some gale warnings for portions of the southern and central Bering Sea, western Aleutians, and eastern Aleutians. Please check your latest hazards map for any updates to watches and advisories and warnings. We wanted to share with you the Alaska wildland fire information. We did have 2,500 strikes or thereabout for yesterday, concentrated in the uplands area there in around Fairbanks. Also scattered around the central interior and up through portions of the Brooks Range, also down through the southwest. Precipitation estimates for June 9th from the River Forecast Center. We had about a quarter to half inches in the eastern interior and less than that down through south central and into the interior. Also around Battles area, we had a quarter or inch or less. And then down there in the southern panhandle, maybe about a half inch amounts in some areas. For the satellite map today, you can see that nice little low there between Shimia and Adak, spreading out an occluder front, and we'll look at the surface map here in a second, but precipitation out ahead of that system along that frontal boundary. Also some precipitation in the Norton Sound area associated with another weak low in the up around Kotzebue, just above Kotzebue there, spreading some enhanced clouds that way, and some fog down across the Arctic coast and through the western portions of the mainland. Also, lastly, the weak low pressure just south of the Aleutians. You can see that system there spreading some, again, that precipitation mainly over the southern panhandle. What's this look like on the surface map? 986 millibar low there in the western Aleutians, occluder front out ahead of that system, with weak high pressure in between that system and the mainland. As you get into the mainland, we see thermal low there, 1,008 millibar low with thunderstorm activity possible, just starting to fire here this afternoon. And again, there's that low south of the Aleutians. South of the Panhandle, 996 millibar low with scattered rain showers associated with that system. Tonight's weather, again, that 992 millibar low now moving slightly southeastward, weakening occluder front. Fog forms along the west coast and marine stratus, and fog along the Arctic coast with weak high pressure bringing onshore flow, and a thermal low and trough system through the eastern interior and down through Yukon Territory and British Columbia, and then that low just south of Panhandles bringing scattered rain showers through southeast Alaska. For Thursday's weather, we'll be looking at again, slight eastward movement of that low in the Aleutians, 994 millibar low now, and weakening into shortwave trough as it moves towards the west coast. High pressure centered over the Yukon YK Delta, and then high pressure over south central with a 1019 millibar high. We will expect some thunderstorm activity across the interior and up into south of the Brooks Range, with scattered rain showers around those systems, and a thermal trough through the northern interior down through the Yukon Territory, weakening low south of the Aleutians, south of the Panhandle, with scattered rain showers in the Panhandle. For Friday's weather, again, 1,000 millibar low now, weak trough out ahead of that system, high pressure through the western mainland into the northern Gulf, and thermal trough through the interior, scattered thunderstorms through the interior, thermal low in Yukon Territory. Low temperatures for Thursday morning, looking at 30s and upper 20s across the North Slope, Kaktovik 29, 31 in Dead Horse, Ukqiavik 29, Point Hope 31, Fort Yukon 52, Anaktuvik Pass 47, Adigan 47, AKwx 47, and then Bettles 47, 52 in Fairbanks, 43 in Eagle, 45 in Northway, Denali Park 41, Talkeetna 45, 40s through the southwest, and Bethel 45, southwest in the Bristol Bay area, again mid 40s, 43 in Cold Bay, 45 in Dutch Harbor, otherwise low 40s, upper 30s through the rest of the Aleutians, and Kodiak 47, 47 Cordova, upper 40s through the Panhandle, and 41 in Yakutat. For high temperatures for Thursday afternoon, again, upper 30s through the Arctic coast there, with again onshore flow keeping things kind of cool and cloudy. Utqiagvik 36, Point Hope 38, 76 there in Fort Yukon, approaching 80s there in the Yukon Flats, and then 70, 74 there in Fairbanks, 72 in Eagle, 70s through much of the eastern interior, and then 60s, mid 60s through Yukon Basin, the lower Yukon Basin, mid 50s through the lower Yukon, and mid 60s through portions of the Kuskokwim, 61 in Bethel, 67 in King Salmon, 65 in Dillingham, 49 in Cold Bay, 49 in Dutch Harbor as well, upper 40s through much of the Aleutians, even 45 in Shemya, and then 59 in Kodiak and 52 in Cordova. And then we go into Panhandle, 58 in Yakutat, 60s through the central and upper Panhandle, and then with a little bit of cloudiness, 50s through the southern Panhandle. For low temperatures Friday morning, looking at 30s again across the Arctic coast there. Kaktoba 31, Deadhorse 32, 31 in Utqiagvik, and then 30 in Point Hope, 47 in Adigan, and then Anaktuvik Pass 43, 52 in Fort Yukon, 47 in Bettles, Ambler 47 as well, and then 41 in Nome, and then 45 in Eagle, 50 in Fairbanks, upper 40s through the Kuskokwim, McGrath 49, 49 in Bethel, and then Emonic 45, 45 in King Salmon, 45 in Dillingham, Kodiak 47, Dutch Harbor 45, 40s through much of the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula mid 40s, and then 45 in Cordova, and then 45 in Yakutat with 50 in Haines, and mid to upper 40s through the rest of the Panhandle. For high temperatures Friday, we're going to be looking at 40s and mid 30s across the Arctic coast, 41 in Deadhorse, and then Point Hope 38, 70 in Adigan Pass, 76 in Fort Yukon, 76 in Eagle, 67 in Bettles, Ambler 61, 70 in Fairbanks, and then a good possibility of 80s, approaching 80s there in the Yukon Flats. And then Tanana 70, 65 in Galena, 70 in McGrath, 65 in Antioch, 65 in Bethel, 60s through much of the southwest, out on the coastal areas of the region, mid 50s, otherwise 65 in King Salmon, 61 in Dillingham, 50s, low 50s through the rest of the Alaska Peninsula, mid 40s through much of the Aleutians, 50 in St. Paul, and Savunga 47, Kodiak 58, 61 in Yakutat, 63 in Haines, those 60s through much of the Panhandle, and then 65 in Anchorage.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the flying weather for Thursday morning, we're going to be continuing with the onshore flow over the Arctic coast, bringing IFR conditions there. Marine stratus along the west coast, and occluded front and a low moving into and through the Aleutians into the Bering will keep IFR conditions through much of the Bering, and then a weak low in the Gulf. Otherwise, some morning cloudiness, marginal conditions over the mountainous areas of southern mainland. So, Thursday afternoon, again, IFR conditions just off the Arctic coast, down the west coast, marginal conditions dominate, and IFR conditions throughout much of the Bering and Aleutians, and even into the southern side of the Alaska Peninsula. Marginal conditions down just off the coast of southeast Panhandle and most coastal areas of the Gulf. And for Friday morning, marginal conditions poking in there into the Brooks Range. Otherwise, continued IFR conditions along the Arctic coast down through the west coast, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, and down through the southwest and across the Bering and into the Aleutians and into the Gulf area, with marginal conditions showing up again in the mountainous areas of the southern mainland, Alaska Range, St. Elias Mountains, Chugach Range. Good, nice conditions over the Panhandle, and then continued nice conditions in the Panhandle with VFR conditions, it looks like. VFR conditions throughout the mainland, IFR conditions just off the coast there in the Arctic, and marginal conditions showing up by afternoon along the west coast, and again IFR conditions throughout the Bering and Aleutians, and IFR conditions scattered in the Gulf region with marginal conditions in the areas, coastal areas. Past conditions for Thursday, again marginal conditions early for AKwx, clearing out for VFR over Adigan, Lake Clark, Merrill, morning fog and low stratus, producing marginal conditions there for both Lake Clark and Merrill, clearing to VFR conditions. Rainy, much the same story, marginal to VFR. Windy, the same. Isabel, the same. Mentasta, the same. Tina, VFR with a little hole there over Tina to pass, VFR conditions. Portage, much the same story, marginal, improving to VFR conditions. Chilkoot and White, nice flying conditions, VFR conditions down in the Panhandle. For freezing levels, rather chaotic map. Surface all the way across, all the way up north across the Arctic coast there. Otherwise, 6,000 to 8,000 feet across much of the mainland, 4,000 feet as you get around that low in the Gulf, bringing lower freezing levels across the Panhandle. Otherwise, 6,000 to even 10,000 feet as you come across the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians. Icing for Thursday around the low and near the Panhandle. I went for some isolated moderate conditions over the Panhandle. Otherwise, just off the coast, considerable moderate areas possible in the western Brooks Range between 9,000 and 10,000 feet, and areas between 8,000 to 10,000 feet across Alaska Peninsula into the southwest, and an area of considerable moderate across the Bering Sea there, again with that occluded front moving through that region. For jet stream on Thursday, low near Kotzebue there, over Kotzebue, 40 to 50 knots in a counterclockwise flow. Again, this is at the jet stream around the low in the Aleutians, 45 to 50 there in the western and central Aleutians, again around clockwise flow. And 120 knot jet there in the southern end of the Gulf around that low pressure system. 9,000 foot winds, vertically stacked low near Kotzebue, 25 to 30 knots around that low. And around the low across the Panhandle, 30 knots there in the southern end of the Panhandle. Otherwise light and variable across the mainland. And around the low in the Aleutians, 25 to 40 knots across that area. And then for 3,000 feet, again, vertically stacked low and over Kotzebue, 25 to 30, around the low, 30 knots there in the Panhandle, and anywhere from 25 to 35 across the Aleutians. For the turbulence map, I did analyze a little bit of area below 4,000 feet, other southern and central Panhandle, otherwise below 3,000 feet in the central and western Aleutians, again below 3,000 feet. Otherwise, no turbulence noted across the mainland.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service, and joining us today, two more people to talk about the augmented reality sandbox. It's Alana Valaji. She's a University of Alaska Fairbanks mechanical engineering student, helped design and work on the details to make this new type of sandbox there. Thanks for joining us, Alana. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator for AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. It's a program funded nationally by the National Science Foundation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Alana, tell us about how you changed and adapted this version of the augmented reality sandbox. It's a really cool tool.
So Gina approached us with 3 goals for this new version of the sandbox. They wanted it to be compact and a light system that could travel around the state. They wanted it to be child-oriented, so we designed the sandbox to have 3 different levels.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. You can have younger children, you can have high school kids. I guess I should say high school teenagers.
Sure.
And then we also designed it to be more marketable, user-friendly, so that this could be seen eventually in classrooms all over the place, all over the state.
Okay. And you had a big hand in this, but this was a team approach, right?
Definitely. It was a really good experience for myself, for George Stevens, who we'll see later.
One of our hand models today. Yeah.
For 2 other members who aren't here today, Cody Klingman and Austin Hunt. And it was just a really good learning experience all around.
Very good. And this is something that is part of your learning experience as well, so you get to check a box in your education.
Yeah,
right?
it's a requirement for seniors of mechanical engineering at University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Very good. Very good. Well, it is a wonderfully inquisitive tool, fun to play with, and I hope to get my hands in the sand here in just a little bit. But it's also part of a bigger program, something that we were talking about a moment ago, AKwx, and that's what Courtney is here to tell us more about. What is AKwx, and why do you need a sandbox?
Well, AKwx, as you mentioned, is a national program. We're funded nationally, but we're actually located statewide. We're at UAF, we're at UAA, we're in Southeast at UAS. And she mentioned, you know, taking the sandbox as an educational tool, and that's where I'm an outreach coordinator for the South Central test case.
Okay.
Our focus is on the Kenai watershed, and we are really interested in using these tools like the sandbox to interact with the students down there and get them interested in STEM and also communicate the research findings that we've been having throughout the state.
Okay. And one of those, as George and Eric are kind of changing the contours for us there from UAF to maybe something that resembles a little bit of something more of the Kenai watershed, which is one of your focuses for the study, right? And specifically looking at some of the changes there and how that impacts people and also the salmon.
Yes, it is all of our research is social and environmental.
Okay.
So we have social scientists working hand in hand with our environmental scientists. One of the things we're studying is Upper Russian Lake, and we have a researcher taking sediment cores from that lake. So one of the things we're going to use the sandbox to communicate is how the landscape changed over a long period of time, thousands of years, going from glacier, covered by glacier ice, to being filled with water. And then
that's what they're doing right now.
Exactly. So
live.
So they're
So
moving
cool.
the water around. And then I think they've got some props over there, because we're also going to go a little bit more in depth and explain how the salmon got there.
Okay.
So using
There's
these,
the salmon.
exactly. Oh, I think there's a few more.
Yeah, we like more salmon in Alaska. More salmon.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really taking the findings from our research grant and just trying to connect with the community and translate it in a really hands-on and exciting way, so people can, you know, interact with us as much as possible.
Well, sure. That makes the learning and the science real and quite literally in your face, rather than just some boring black and white paper that you have to read about. This is something that people can understand better because it's visual and they're touching and feeling and seeing these changes, right?
Yeah, and get them engaged. And then outreach is a huge component, and working with the younger students, and actually even, I mean, working with the UAF graduate and engineering students it's a huge part of our grant, and we really enjoy it.
No, it is wonderfully exciting. And so, Alana, you were telling us that this is built to travel.
Right.
And this is built to do more things than version 1. Where can this type of project go in Alaska? And what can it demonstrate?
I mean, we were hoping to eventually get to villages that were harder to reach, that you couldn't necessarily move a whole fixed instrument to, right? You need something that can pack up, fit in your truck bed. I mean, one of the most attractive parts of this project is that this was going to be something that was used past our graduation point. You know, this is
Okay.
going to be something that lives in the state for years.
Right, right. Well, it looks like you're well on your way with that. So what are, give me another example. What else can this show us? We've talked about the Kenai River watershed. What's the coolest thing that you've played in the sand with? What's your idea?
Well, I definitely enjoy the props, but we also like kind of building up a giant mound, and if you put some water behind it, you can make a little runway, I guess, and
Okay.
you know, demonstrate the effects of the hydrology by just putting up a dam and letting it all pour right down.
Okay.
And so that could, I think you mentioned it earlier, you could even demonstrate the effects of a tsunami
Right.
or
okay.
something along those lines.
So it's not just topography, but it's also hydrology
Yes.
and coastal surge mapping and some of the coastal changes that we're seeing here in Alaska, and seeing what the smaller changes in the sandbox might do to kind of a real effect of a slosh or a push of water up on the coast. Tsunami inundation mapping, or even glacial dam release, as some has been demonstrated before.
Yep.
So wow, that's just an impressive thing. That it seems like the possibilities are nearly endless with this, and probably even more ideas that are popping up in your head too.
Yeah, as we speak.
Very cool. All right. Well, if folks want to get more information about AKwx, you guys are online. You're on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. AKEPSCOR, right? AKwx, Alaska AKwx, that is. And again, you guys are funded by the National Science Foundation,
Yes,
so
we are.
more to come from that, and a longer-term study there. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Congratulations on your hard work there. This is really fun. And for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and I'm going to go play in the sandbox there. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the sea ice analysis today, continued clear ice conditions in Norton Sound. We also analyzed some open water just to the northwest of Point Hope, Point Lay area. It may show as lower concentrations, but there actually was some open areas of open water in there. And we're continuing to see some decreasing ice concentration throughout Beaufort Sea and Chukchi Sea. So things continue to deteriorate in the ice world. Looking at Marine's forecast for southeast, inside waters winds generally from the north or northeast, 10 knots there. Southern inside waters from the southeast at 20 knots. Outside waters winds generally from the east at 25 to 30. Northern Gulf area winds from the east at 20, seas as high as 9 feet. Southern end of the outside waters seas up to 14 feet. For southeast on Thursday, inside waters winds generally from the south at 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet. Outside waters winds generally from the east 15 to 20, seas as high as 9 feet. Gulf Coast region winds from the west at 10. For South Central Wednesday, looking at Prince William Sound, winds from the east at 10, seas as high as 2 feet. Gulf area, winds generally from the east or northeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 6 feet. Cook Inlet winds generally from the east at 10 knots, seas as high as 3 feet in the central Cook Inlet there. And then Thursday, Prince William Sound winds generally from the west at 10 knots, seas as high as 2 feet. Gulf area, Gulf region, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, seas as high as 5 feet, just east of the Barren Islands. And then Cook Inlet, winds generally from the east or southeast in the central and northern Cook Inlet, seas as high as 4 feet, winds generally from around 15 knots. And then the southern Cook Inlet, winds generally from the southeast at 15, seas as high as 4 feet west of the Barren Islands. For Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, winds around Kodiak Island, generally from the northwest at 10 to 20, seas as high as 7 feet. South side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from the northwest at 20, seas as high as 5 feet. North side of the peninsula, winds from the northwest at 15 to 20, seas as high as 5 feet in Bristol Bay area. And then Thursday, looking around Kodiak Island, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, seas as high as 6 feet. South side of the peninsula, winds generally from the east at 20, seas as high as 7 feet. North side of the peninsula, winds generally from the southeast at 15, seas as high as 3 feet. And then for the Aleutians, Wednesday, looking at winds generally from in the central and eastern Aleutians, winds generally from the east or southeast up to 35 knots there. Seas as high as 13 feet just south of Atka. Over on the western side of the Aleutians, winds generally from a southerly or northerly direction, depending on where you're at, as high as 35 knots, seas as high as 15 feet. Winds come down, and there will be a gale warning out for today. And then for Thursday, Aleutian change, winds generally from the southerly direction, 20 to 25 knots in the central, 15 knots in the eastern, but otherwise in the western, winds generally from a south or north, depending on where you're at, up to 30 knots, seas as high as 12 feet. For the west coast, looking at winds generally from the west at 15, seas as high as 4 feet. And Thursday, winds generally from the southeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 7 feet near the Pribs. And for the Arctic coast, winds continue from the east at 10 knots, opening up some more of that ice. And then for the Chukchi Sea, looking at winds generally from the east, 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet. And for Thursday, winds continue from the east along the Arctic coast there, 15 to 20, down through the Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait, looking at winds generally from the southeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet. For tonight's weather, looking at that 992 millibar low moving slowly east with a weakening included front, fog out ahead of that system, rain showers along the frontal band, and thermal trough through the interior with scattered thunderstorms. Much the same scenario on Thursday afternoon with a low in the Aleutians slowly moving east and another low weakening south of the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.